Hi, I'm Marissa Ambrose. I'm doing this video for my class Reading Research with Dr. Misty Saylor, and this is based on my literature review. I focus on motivation because I teach struggling at-risk students reading at a high school. So a lot of times motivation is a really important factor because struggling readers aren't always the most motivated to read. And I wanted to look at what, causes those things, maybe, how to motivate students who seem unable to be motivated, because it's not impossible, and that's why we're there, to make a difference. It's spring break, and I'm in my room doing this video because I chose to do the online course. So I have this video angled just right. That way you can't see the tremendous mess in my room. Basically, I was looking at extrinsic and intrinsic motivation, and I was relating it to doing this video and cleaning up. I am very motivated to clean up my room intrinsically because deep down inside I would really like for this office to be cleaned. However, I'm also motivated to achieve in school, so that's taking precedence over it, particularly since spring break is almost over. I've spent most of it doing my research for this, and I'm about to take a bunch of kids out on a retreat, so my time is running out. So this project took precedence over my wanting to clean. Now, I could also be extrinsically motivated, which means you're more concerned about what people think or reward, recognition, that sort of thing. And extrinsic motivation would say, I'm going to clean this office so that this video looks good for y'all. But I kind of overrode that and just opted to put this video at a good angle to where you can't see what a mess it is. So that overrode that. And we can relate that to reading. Students may read or complete assignments or, whatever it may be because of extrinsic motivation, meaning they want a good grade or they want recognition or reward or whatever it may be. Intrinsic motivation would be if they read just for the fun of it. They read because they have curiosity, they're interested in the topic, that sort of thing. And so I was looking at both of those types of motivation in my research as they pertain to reading. So one example I saw in some studies was that extrinsic motivation was a factor when students were a part of a program at their school, like say they got rewarded for having read the most books, and there's different tiers to the reward system like that, and they noticed that the extrinsically motivated students read far more while the program was in effect, whereas the intrinsically motivated students read more throughout the year regardless, whereas the extrinsic, it rose and fell. Now, intrinsic motivation is harder to tap into because it's within the students themselves, and oftentimes we have to start with extrinsic motivators in order to get the kids going, and hopefully it will transfer into intrinsic motivation as they find things that they like to read, they find success, a greater self-efficacy, has a very big impact as well. Another thing I noticed in a lot of my research studies that I've seen so far is student choice is very powerful. Now, Stephen Krashen has done a lot of work about student choice. In fact, he maintains that that is what you need more than anything. It has a greater effect than other strategies you may use. He explains in some of his studies that he found if you just gave the kids a chance to choose, and they had lots and lots of options, say a library school of a wide array of options, and you could assist them with that, then that was far more successful than otherwise. So, of course, a lot of the Stephen Krashen research I've found so far is not in peer-reviewed magazines. But here's some of the stuff that I found that is. I found in the English Journal an article by Katie Dredger, and she wrote all about actually an AP English class, which normally I would think is so far-fetched for what I'm trying to do, because remedial reading, AP English, two totally different things. And actually, she brought up some really great points. She talked about how she started teaching reading strategies to her AP English students, and she opened it up to more students than just the elite. And so, really she had a lot to offer, and her big thing was breaking away from the curriculum. Like, she was kind of going with the curriculum, but kind of doing her own thing and integrating the two. She actually was supposed to have the students cover 3 Shakespearean plays, and what she actually did was she broke up her week for a 6-week marking period, and on Mondays and Fridays she explicitly taught them vocabulary and strategies and stuff like that, and then Wednesday through Thursday she had the students actually doing their own research, and each of them chose their group. They chose which Shakespearean play they were going to focus on, and they were presenting to each other, and they were learning themselves, they were teaching each other, and each of the students were an expert on one of the Shakespearean plays as opposed to all 3, but they did learn about all 3 from each other, and I thought that was excellent, and it's definitely something that reading instructors can implement into their curriculum. Oftentimes we've seen that in the college setting, but we don't see it as often in public school settings, and we can. And she talked about how she did that and the challenges, and her results in the end outweighed her expectations. She expected moderate success and was hoping she didn't take too big of a risk and everything like that, but she said all of the students exceeded her expectations, and actually 11 of the 88 students made perfect scores on their AP exams at the end of the year. So that was a great success. Another study I looked at was by Wakefield and Guthrie, where they talked about the reading questionnaire, which has become pretty popular, and it's all about motivation, and you ask the students a number of questions to see where they're motivated, and each item is weighted on a different type of motivation, and so that study really explored that, and they explored the intrinsic and extrinsic motivation and how those affected, as I mentioned earlier, with the intrinsic and extrinsic motivation that aligned with this study. And they found the most success with students who had high self-efficacy and high intrinsic motivation, and then the extrinsic motivation was pretty good too. So that was that study. And also I looked at another study from Learning Disability Quarterly about the classification of students with reading comprehension difficulties and the roles of motivation, affect, and psychopathology. And basically what they found in that study was that really it was the cognitive aspects that affected student achievement more so than motivation, but motivation was still a strong predictor of their success. So, of course, this is, kind of taking a different viewpoint because it's focusing on students with learning disabilities. However, if your classroom's like mine, you do get students with learning disabilities, and so that's definitely something to take into account. An interesting thing about that study was their participants were Greek students, and they did everything in their native language, and it was mixed ability students. It wasn't all disabled, and so that was a pretty interesting study as well.